Romans 12:9 in the English Standard Version. Let love be genuine. So we're back to what Paul says genuine love looks like. Romans 12:12. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. I think all these go back to Matthew 22:37. Love God with all your heart. The first and most important commandment. Be joyful in hope. Well, hope in what? I think you might immediately think, well, hope in my salvation. But what does that have to do with love? I mean, it's kind of a selfish thing. What do I get out of it? My salvation. I kind of think that Paul has in mind more of the Romans 5:2, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Remember that? Of course, remember that the glory of God doesn't mean quite what we think it does. The Greek word translated glory there has a lot of different possible meanings. Just like green can be, she's green with envy. She's on a ship and she's turning green. Well, she's seasick. She's green. She just started a new job, so she's green at the job. Okay, this kind of breaks down the way that one translation translates the word. You can see normally they translate it as glory or glorious. But notice the third one, praise. Now, it's kind of over-representing glorious because whenever a translation committee has a disagreement, they go with the most common, which would be glory or glorious. But I think in this case, praise makes more sense. Through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace in which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Hope? Glory of God? What do we have to do with God's glory? We have nothing to do with God's glory. And there's no hope about it. God has His glory. So translating the glory of God there doesn't make a lot of sense. But if we think of it as more praise, then you have, and we boast in the hope of God's praise. Or as BDEC, their third definition, honor or enhancement or recognition of status of performance. So we boast in the hope of God's recognition of our performance. So what does that have to do with be joyful in hope? Well, it's the hope of God's recognition of our performance or God's praise. And when you love somebody, getting their praise is a pretty important thing. So I think the idea there is if you love God, then you're going to want to receive His praise. Patient in affliction. Well, I think how that relates to love, it's, again, like I said, I think it relates to the love of God. You're willing to suffer for Him. Because of your love of God, you're willing to endure. Faithful in prayer. What does that have to do with love? Well, first of all, I think if you love somebody, you want to talk to them. So if you love God, then of course, then you would want to pray to him. But I think there's something else here too. The Greek word that's translated prayer has the idea of request. And if I think about that, Paul is always praying for the different churches. And I think that changes you. In other words, when Paul is praying for the different churches, he's thinking about the people. He's focusing on their needs. And I think that makes you more aware of other people. So it kind of develops more your ability to love because you're forced to think about the needs of other people around you, where typically, we don't do that. We just think about our needs. So to take time and actually think about what other people are going through increases our ability to love other people. However, is it just a mental exercise? When you ask for something from God, he knows everything. He knows what's best. He knows the best thing to do. So how can our prayers be effective? The first thing is, apparently they are. James 5:16. Therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. So even though God knows the best thing to do, before you ask, prayers are still powerful and effective. 2 Corinthians 1:11. As you help us by your prayers, then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to your prayers. And then we actually have a case in point back in 2 Corinthians 25-7. Go back and tell Hezekiah, the ruler of my people, this is what the Lord, the God of your father David says. I have heard your prayer and have seen your tears. I will heal you. On the third day from now, you will go up into the temple of the Lord. I will add 15 years to your life. So there you have an example of where Hezekiah's prayers changed what God was going to do. I think what all this implies is that a lot of times God knows the best things to do, but he holds back unless the saints ask him to do something. And sometimes, like in the case of Hezekiah, he did something that was not in the best interest of Israel. Because Hezekiah did not die, he showed emissaries from another nation all the riches of the temple. And later on, they came and destroyed the temple and took all the treasures. So if he had died, then he would not have shown them that, and the temple would not have been destroyed. Well, we still haven't gotten through this passage, so next week we will continue on.